Hello and welcome back. You're listening to Unreliable Sources, your bi-weekly briefing for mystery lovers, thriller junkies, and suspense addicts. I'm Mike Donohue, thriller author and red herring enthusiast. Let's get into it. On today's show, we're diving into the avalanche of year-end book lists that have started dropping. Barnes & Noble, Publishers Weekly, and Esquire all weighing in on 2025's best reads. We'll also look at some troubling news about library book distribution and an interesting piece about what happens to an author's unpublished manuscripts after they're gone. Then we've got some solid new releases to add to your TBR, including the latest Jack Reacher adventure and a haunting debut from Emma Stonix. For our main feature this week, we're talking about forgotten mystery authors, 5 brilliant mid-century writers who dominated bestseller lists and won major awards, but somehow slipped through the cracks. These aren't failed writers or one-hit wonders. They invented techniques we think of as modern, and you'll find their fingerprints all over your favorite contemporary thrillers. If you're looking to expand your reading beyond the usual suspects, this episode's for you. Plus, as always, I'll let you in on what I've been reading and watching lately. The television's fixed, including my belated dive into P.D. James and Vince Gilligan's weird new show. Let's kick things off with some recent headlines from the Book and Crime Beat. If you're like me and use these year-end lists to catch up on books you missed or as holiday gift shopping guides, they've started coming out in earnest now. Esquire, Barnes & Noble, and Publishers Weekly have all released their best of 2025 lists recently, and they're worth checking out, though each takes a very different approach. Esquire's list doesn't include tons of outright mystery and thrillers and doesn't break it down by genre, but it does feature some genre-adjacent titles like Kaplan's Plot, Bog Queen, The Dream Hotel, and The Buffalo Hunter. Barnes & Noble's big list is broken down by categories, so mystery and thrillers are well represented. And maybe they swung too far in the opposite direction from Esquire. They feature a lot of very well-known authors. I sometimes like these lists to dig into the lesser-known books I might have missed. Still, if you dig deep, there are a few nice surprises. Finally, Publishers Weekly's list feels like the most eclectic to me. The Buffalo Hunter makes their overall top 10, and their genre list is commendable. Mainstream names like Carl Hyacin rubbing shoulders with Lou Berney, Jennifer G. Vaughn, and Kristen Berry. All the list links are in the show notes if you want to check them out for yourself. If you're a library user and haven't kept up with the Baker and Taylor bankruptcy, 404 Media has an excellent primer and deep dive on what this loss means for libraries and how it might impact you as a borrower. Baker and Taylor was one of the largest book distributors in the country, and their sudden recent shutdown has left libraries scrambling to find alternative suppliers. This isn't just industry inside baseball. If your local library suddenly has fewer new titles or longer wait times, this might be the reason why. It's a reminder that the infrastructure supporting our access to books is more fragile than we might realize. Finally, the posthumous manuscript dilemma. Town & Country published a fascinating piece about what to do with posthumous manuscripts, those novels that authors leave behind, finished or unfinished, when they die. Do you publish them as is? Complete them with another author? Leave them in the vault? There's really no easy answer, and the piece explores how different estates have handled this delicate question. It's worth reading, especially if you've ever wondered about the ethics of books like Go Set a Watchman or completed works like The Silmarillion. As both a reader and a writer, I find this endlessly complicated and fascinating. Now let's take a look at what's new and notable recently. The trend of big-name authors getting books out for the holiday season continues. Lee and Andrew Child's latest Jack Reacher novel has landed, Exit Strategy. And if you're a fan of the series, you know exactly what you're getting. A drifter with a moral compass, bad guys who underestimate him, and hopefully satisfying justice delivered with extreme prejudice. The Child brothers have found their rhythm together, maybe? And this one promises, hopefully, another solid entry in one of thriller fiction's most reliable franchises. Can you hear my vacillation there? I have not got my hands on this yet, and I know some longtime readers feel like Andrew's entries are not quite up to snuff yet. He's definitely made changes to slightly modernized Reacher, and sometimes the plots maybe get overcomplicated. I mean, Lee was just a master at those slow drip, big plots that really paid off. We will see. I'll report back when I do get my hands on it and read it. Next up, T. Jefferson Parker's Wild Instinct. Parker returns with another Charlie Hood novel, blending his trademark California noir with environmental themes. Parker's been writing crime fiction for decades, and he really never phones it in, even though he's also one of those sort of names that I wonder why they never broke out wider or bigger. His prose has a literary quality that elevates straightforward crime plots into something more substantial. Check him out if you've never read T. Jefferson Parker. A lot to choose from beyond just his latest. Next up, another heavyweight, Janet Ivanovich with King's Ransom. If you need something lighter and faster paced, Ivanovich delivers another Gabriella Rose adventure. This is not a Stephanie Plum one. This is the second Gabriella Rose, I believe. These books are just pure popcorn entertainment, and I mean that in the best possible way. Smart, funny, with just enough danger to keep things interesting. Think of them as a palate cleanser between those heavier reads you might take on. Finally, I wanted to highlight The Sunshine Man by Emma Stonex. This one's been getting serious buzz as a literary thriller with gothic undertones. This is our sophomore effort. Stonex's debut, The Lamplighters, earned rave reviews, and this follow-up explores obsession, art, and darkness lurking beneath sunny surfaces. If you appreciate atmospheric writing, moral complexity, definitely add this to your TBR over the holidays. All right, moving on to this week's feature. Let's talk about those forgotten mystery authors, specifically 5 brilliant writers who dominated their era but somehow slipped through the cracks of literary memory. Here's a confession. I used to think I knew my mystery fiction. I could rattle off the greats, of course, Christie, Chandler, Highsmith, Hammett. I dug into the 70s, read through the 80s and 90s, but recently I realized I was only scratching the surface. There's a whole generation of mid-century writers who were massive in their time, bestsellers, award winners, pioneers even, who've essentially disappeared. These weren't failures or one-hit wonders. Many of them invented techniques we consider modern today and are all over today's books. So why did they fade? Sometimes it was just fashion, sometimes bad luck, sometimes they got eclipsed by whoever came next. But their influence never really left. You'll find their fingerprints all over contemporary thrillers. First up is Cornell Woolrich, who also wrote as William Irish. If you've seen Hitchcock's Rear Window, you've experienced a genius without knowing it. The man had over 100 film adaptations of his work, far more than Chandler and Habit ever managed. Woolrich was the absolute master of when will it happen suspense. His stories feature ordinary people trapped in deadline-driven nightmares with the universe offering zero mercy. His prose has this feverish, desperate quality that gets under your skin. Reading Woolrich feels like being stuck in a dark room with a ticking clock. His masterpiece, Phantom Lady, follows a man accused of murder whose only alibi, a woman he met in a bar, has vanished. His execution date looms while friends search for this Phantom Lady through a terrifying urban shadow world. If you love paranoid thrillers, this is essential reading. Next up, the godmother of domestic noir. Margaret Millar won 2 Edgar Awards and received the Grand Master Award in 1983. Gillian Flynn and Megan Abbott cite her as an influence, but for years her reputation lived in this frustrating space where she was more admired than read, partly because she was overshadowed by her husband, crime writer Ross MacDonald. Thankfully, that seems to be changing. Millar was astonishingly versatile, writing everything from hard-boiled detective tales to psychological thrillers that would fit perfectly on today's bestseller list. She explored dark secrets beneath polite society decades before domestic noir became a genre label. Her Edgar-winning Beast in View features a reclusive heiress terrorized by disturbing phone calls. The final twist has been imitated countless times since, but rarely bettered. Raymond Chandler called Elisabeth Saxony Holding the top suspense writer of them all, yet for years her work was nearly impossible to find. Maybe because her protagonists were often women and her focus was the home rather than mean streets. She didn't fit the hard-boiled image that dominated noir's revival. But Holding was pioneering psychological suspense decades before it became trendy. Her novel The Blank Wall follows a World War II housewife who goes to extreme lengths to shield her family from scandal. It's been adapted to film twice and still reads as remarkably fresh today. What makes Holding special is her ability to create genuine terror from festering family dilemmas. No gun-toting gangsters needed, just the suffocating weight of secrets and limited options. Imagine if Dashiell Hammett and the Marx Brothers collaborated on a mystery novel. That's pretty close to what you get with Craig Rice. In 1946, Time magazine put Rice on its cover, the first mystery writer ever to receive that honor. She specialized in what I can only describe as murder with laughs, mixing hard-boiled crime fiction with rapid-fire banter and genuinely clever plotting. Her personal troubles slowed her output before her early death in 1957, and her broad, boozy humor went out of style as tastes shifted toward grittier crime. But reading Rice now is pure joy. Home Sweet Homicide features mystery-obsessed kids solving a murder in their neighborhood. It's delightful chaos from start to finish. Check her out. Finally, if you love books like The Woman in the Window or The Girl on the Train, you need to know about Celia Fremlin. She was writing domestic noir in the 50s and 60s, though her work was often mislabeled as romantic suspense, which completely missed how sharp, satirical, and deeply unsettling her novels actually are. Her Edgar-winning debut, The Hours Before Dawn, follows a sleep-deprived young mother who suspects there's a murderer hiding in her lodging house. It's a masterclass in psychological gaslighting and ambient dread. You will never feel more empathy for a character's bone-deep exhaustion. So why does all this matter? Well, these writers aren't just historical curiosities. They're the essential hidden wiring of every modern thriller you love. The paranoia of Woolrich echoes in every Race Against Time plot. The domestic dread of Fremlin and Holding is the DNA of Gone Girl and every domestic thriller that followed. Millar's psychological complexity informs the best crime dramas on television or on page today. Plus, there's something genuinely thrilling about reading a book that feels like a secret discovery. When you find a 1940s paperback that absolutely wrecks you, you get to be the person saying, "Hey, you have to read this," knowing most people have never heard of it. Thanks to dedicated reprint efforts and ebook availability, these books are easier now to find than ever. If you're looking to expand your mystery horizons beyond the usual suspects or bestseller lists, these authors are waiting. Your new favorite writer might have been hiding in sight for 70 years. Okay, let's wrap up with what I'm reading and watching. Right now, I'm catching up on Chris Offutt's Mick Harden series with the second book, Shifty's Boys. The first one, The Killing Hills, was a revelation, tight economical prose set in rural Kentucky with a protagonist who feels genuinely lived in. Offutt writes about Appalachia with the kind of authenticity that comes from actually being there, not just passing through with a notebook. If you like rural noir with real stakes and no wasted words, this series deserves your attention. On audio, I'm listening to P.D. James' short story collection, Sleep No More. I'm embarrassed to say I haven't read much, P.D. James, a massive gap in my crime fiction education, so this felt like a good way to get an overview of the late, great master. And I'm really loving it. James wrote with this elegant precision that feels almost old-fashioned now in the best possible way. Her detectives actually detect. Her plots unfold methodically, and there's a moral seriousness underneath the puzzle solving. It's a nice counterpoint to the faster, more sensational thrillers I usually gravitate towards. Finally, I watched the pilot of Vince Gilligan's mysterious and long-awaited follow-up to Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, the Apple TV series Pluribus. Not much to say so far since we're only a couple episodes in, but I liked it. It reminded me of his best X-Files episodes, taking familiar genre tropes and twisting them into something new and strange. There's a sci-fi element, some genuinely unsettling moments, and that Gilligan signature of making you care deeply about characters in morally complicated situations. I'm interested to see where it goes, though I'm trying not to set my expectations too high. That's the curse, I suppose, of being a Vince Gilligan fan. You're always comparing new work to Breaking Bad, which really isn't fair to anyone. All right, that's it for this episode. Let me leave you with this week's question. Have you discovered any forgotten or overlooked mystery authors that blew you away? Maybe you stumbled across a dusty paperback at a used bookstore or found a reissued classic that felt surprisingly modern. Or are there mid-century writers you grew up reading that you wish more people knew about? Drop me a line with your picks. I'd love to hear about the hidden gems you've discovered, and I might feature some listener recommendations in a future episode. You can email me, Mike at MikeDonahueBooks.com, or find me on Blue Sky at MikeDMystery, or Instagram and Facebook at Mike Donohue Books. This has been Unreliable Sources. I'm Mike Donohue. Thanks for listening. Until next time, stay sharp, follow the clues, and don't trust anyone who skips to the end.